Hello, I'm Paul from Paul Ranson Art. Welcome to my studio. Over my shoulder is a painting called The Grandeur of Summer, and it's a Bob Ross classic and one that I've enjoyed painting for you. It contains lots of the elements that Bob would always put into his paintings. Fluffy clouds, a lovely mountain, loads of trees and bushes for you to practice as well, and it's one that everyone should have a go at painting at some time. I've listed down below all the materials that I've used. So, sit back and enjoy my tutorial. Happy painting, people. Here's my canvas, 16 by 20, made of paper. I'm going to divide it into three. The top section for a mountain, a midground, and then a foreground. My brush handle is rather a useful item to measure with, and I'll mark the distances using some of these little map pins, one in each side, will help me lay out my painting. I'm going to be using Bob Ross landscape brushes. These are 1 inch. This one's a little newer and this one a little older. I'm going to be using a couple of fan brushes and a liner brush and maybe a filbert, but not sure, and a palette knife, of course. This is a wet on wet painting technique, and I'm going to be using this Bob Ross liquid white to prepare my canvas, and I'm going to put a thin coat all over. I keep a small amount of liquid white in this airtight pot for ease of use. I'm going to use that old brush to paint, and I'm going to distribute a small amount around the canvas to start with. Don't forget, hold on to your canvas and give it a good working in. This wants to be a thin, even coat, so when you touch it, you just see your fingerprints. If you barely see anything, you're being a bit mean with it, and if it looks like ice cream, well, just too much. I finish off my canvas with long, flat, even strokes. If you want to know more about how to use liquid white correctly, I made a video all about it. I'll drop a link down below. I want to use this brush again, so I'll give it a good dry clean so I don't carry any liquid white into my paint. Here's the palette I'm going to be using. Titanium white, phthalo blue, black, Van Dyke brown and alizarin crimson. I'll add the rest of the colours later. Using that dry clean brush, I'm going to pick up just a small amount of phthalo blue. It's a very strong colour, so I want to use it cautiously. Pick up a small amount and give it a good tap to distribute the paint through the bristles. Now, best place to start is in these corners. I don't want a big dark blue centre. So put a little bit on and stand back. If it's too strong, you can always put some somewhere else on the canvas, like down in the bottom where there's going to be some water. I use little crisscross strokes, allowing the colour to fade as it reaches the horizon line. Go outside and look at a nice blue sky. You'll see that's exactly how it is in real life. Colour fades as it reaches the horizon line. Down in the bottom corners, I'm going to add some more blue. These are level, flat strokes. This is going to be some water. There, nice and level. Next I want to lay out the position of my mountain, and I'm going to use a palette knife and I'm just going to scratch on a basic design. A little left of centre for the main peak. If you don't like the design, you can paint it out and do it again. A little cloud here, and maybe one over on the other side as well. For my clouds, I'm going to use a fan brush and some titanium white paint. Load your brush very well. Don't be too mean with it. I'm going to use a little letter C. I'm not going to start too close to the top of the canvas, just on my outline, and as you can see, every little letter C builds up the shape of the cloud. Think about the silver lining first. You want to see a nice bright top edge, and as the paint runs out, I'll do the middle and bottom of the cloud. This shape looks like a snake. I think I'll add a little bit more to the centre. So always stand back and make sure you haven't painted the Loch Ness Monster. It happens too easily. And I should know. I painted quite a few Nessies in my time. Here you can see how thick the paint is, and I need to soften it. I got my nice brush, not the old one, and I'm going to just gently dab and make some little C shapes with it. This just softens down the paint a little bit, but don't overdo it. Leave some of the cloud unblended. It gives it much more depth and makes it look much more realistic. Tap out the little bottom edge though. We just want that a bit softer. There. Perfect. Give your brush a dry clean and then super light finger and thumb. Barely any pressure. Just going to drag it across the surface of the painting. I just want to roll those fat edges of paint into the centres of the cloud. If you brush out, it looks like it's raining. Here I see the opportunity to add a second cloud. I'll borrow the edge of the first one and just add a little bit of extra highlight in the centre. This way you can make several clouds from one shape. Always be on the lookout for these extra details and layers in your painting. It's what gives it that extra special quality. If you enjoy my tutorials and want to help me grow my channel, consider giving me a like, it's a little thumbs up. You can subscribe, don't forget to ring the bell, and tell your friends and family that you've seen something enjoyable. You can go one step further and buy me a coffee. There's a link down below. I'll spend the money on more paint supplies. Thank you. Time to paint a mountain. I'm going to take some phthalo blue, a little black, some Van Dyke brown, and some crimson. And I'm going to mix this all up to make a good dark inky blue colour. I think I need a bit more paint though. That's better. Now gather up a small roll of paint and using firm pressure, finger on the back of the knife, really press this colour down into the canvas. It wants to look a really good inky blue-black colour. Scrape off the surplus as you go and press it down and move it along. I just want to stain the canvas with this dark blue colour. Aim for the pins at the side, don't go below, but keep all the dark colour at the very top of the mountain. Don't drag it all down into the centre. Time to readjust that size. It's the reason why I didn't go too close to the top to start with. Mountains tend to grow as you paint them. They never seem to get any smaller. Scrape off the excess paint and then use the nice brush just to gently blend out the bottom edge. The sunlight in my painting is coming from the right hand side. So if I take my palette knife and split my mountain down the centre, all the snow on the right hand side will be in highlight and all the snow on the left will be in shadow. I'm going to take some titanium white paint and make part of it a bit more blue, which is the shadow side, and the other side I'm going to leave white. I'll add a little bit of phthalo blue for the shadow side and maybe even grey it down a little bit using some of the original mountain colour. Not too much. And as you can see, my paint is very flat. I'm going to use my palette knife to gather up a small roll of titanium white paint. Put the points of the palette knife at the very crest of the mountain and then let your knife slide gently down, aiming for the pins. Kick that handle out as you do it and just let the paint break. This takes a little practice, but the more you do, the better at it you'll get. As they say, practice makes progress. I'll come back and just retouch these edges. They're a little bit too grey. I reloaded my knife with that shadow colour, and now I'm going to let my knife ski down the mountain to the other pin, and again let the paint break. Don't be tempted to overfill your mountain with colour. There should be 3 good colours here. The original dark colour, the snowy colour, and the shadow colour. And you should see all those little dark areas peeking through from underneath. I'll get that little edge with a bit more paint in a second. I'm going to add another peak just here. Again, keep aiming for the pins at the side. Don't let your mountain slip too low in the painting. You'll crowd out the midground if you do. It's very easy to run out of position, and now you see why those pins are so helpful. To add depth and distance to my painting, I tap out the very base of the mountain to create a misty layer. I'm going to gather up all of these colours that I have left on my palette. So I've just got a pale blue-grey colour. And I'm going to darken it down a little bit. I want a sort of a dove grey colour with a blue tint to it. This is for some trees, but they're quite distant, so I don't want any great detail. I've got this on my nice 1-inch brush. As you see as I tap, well, the colour isn't quite dark enough. It doesn't stand out enough. Let's play with it a bit. I'll add a bit more of that mountain colour. So these are just ridges of distant trees, no great detail. As you can see, I'm using that misty layer behind so they stand out a little bit more. Now, another layer of mist. Just diffuse that base to create another layer of depth and distance. Now just a few gentle upward strokes to make the tips of some little trees. And the illusion is complete. A whole bank of trees, simply painted. I've added a little hint of sap green to the next layer. As things get closer to you in a painting, just as in real life, you start to see colour and detail. I scratched a line with my fan brush, and this will be where I put some more detailed trees. I've made a lovely dark green colour with some more sap green and mountain mix. I want these little fir trees a bit bigger on the left, a bit smaller on the right. As a guide, I like to put on just a few trees, so I stay in scale. It's very easy for them to get too big all the way across. Notice how I keep the handle of my brush up and I strike down with one part of the brush. Let the brush tap and skid to create the impression of little fir trees. Anything below that line is going to be a reflection, so don't worry too much if you get some paint over the water. In fact, some of the taller trees need longer reflections. I dry clean my nice 1-inch brush again, and I'm going to use this with firm pressure, really push hard and give it a little downward flick. Make sure you go straight down. I know my reflections don't look level and don't look straight. It's just the angle of the camera. Brush across gently to complete the reflections, but again, don't overdo it. I'm going to use my fan brush and a little bit of that blue-grey colour from the shadow side of my mountain with a little bit of firm pressure just above the waterline. Give it a little upward flick to give the illusion of tree trunks at the bases of those little fir trees. To finish off, I tap my palette knife into a little bit of off-white paint, and just where that little scratch line was, touch and with firm pressure slide your knife along to create a little waterline. I want to start planning my foreground. Some detail on the right, maybe a little island, and then a mass of trees and bushes on the left. I don't want this island to go too far to the centre, but this one I don't mind crossing over into the middle a bit further. It's always good to allow some room for other elements in your painting. So think carefully when you're planning, and if you don't like the design, the scratch marks are easy to tap out. I'm going to paint some evergreens that are a bit bigger, but I'm using the same dark green colour as before. So I've gathered up all the dark colours, sap green and the last of the mountain mix to make one big dark green underpainting colour. This is quite a sticky paint. You'll see why when we add highlights. I bring my brush to a chiselled edge, and I like to mark the centres of my trees first, so just tap down. Now I hold my brush on a corner, and instead of tapping down, I'm going to tap upwards. I want my trees to have a little smile, so using one corner, just gentle pressure, but press the brush against the canvas. Don't let the bristles slide. You're leaving an imprint of the brush, which is textured. As you want bigger branches, either add more taps or press a little harder, whichever works best for you. Let's paint the other one. Mark the centre line, load the brush well, keep the handle up, and just on one corner, press and make some little smiles. Overlap them and build up a lovely dark centre. We'll add a trunk and highlights later. Now, let's work on these bushes. For this, I'm going to use the same dark colour and my old 1-inch brush, but I want to load it very carefully by pulling the brush one direction through that dark green sticky paint, and as I do it, I press the brush in to make the corner of the brush round over. Can you see? My brush has a rounded corner to it, and it's that rounded corner that's going to go to the top of the bush. I'll repeat this process over and over. All I'm doing is creating one little rounded shape, one on top of another on top of another. Could form a big bush or a tree, whichever you wish. But I'm careful not to let my brush skid. The idea is to create a textured surface for a highlight to stick to, and that's the reason why this paint is very thick and sticky. I'll add a little bit more for some reflections of the fir trees. Whilst I've got that dark green colour on my brushes, I'll do the trees and bushes on the left. I'll use a little bit of time lapse for this. Now you can see why this Bob Ross painting is such a good one for practicing those trees and bushes. There are so many of them. I've added some highlights to my palette, including some dark sienna. I'll marble mix this with some off-white. This will be the colour for the tree trunks on my fir trees. I leave it marbled, and I pick up a small roll of paint on the edge of my knife. I'll add a little touch of this colour to the centre of my fir trees, but just here and there. I'll be adding some highlights on top. As you can see, I've added sap green, cad yellow, yellow ochre, Indian yellow and red to my palette. I'm going to brush mix cad yellow and sap green on one of my fan brushes, one I used with white paint. And see how I load just the edge of the brush, I give it a little push. I want a nice bead of paint to highlight the edges of my fir trees. Just gentle pressure is all you need. The highlight colours are thin and oily, The underpaint colours are dark and sticky, and a thin paint will stick to a thick paint. It's the reason why you don't want to thin down your underpaint colours. You want them to remain dark and sticky. Now, with my nice 1-inch brush, notice how I load it the same way as we did for the dark underpaint colours. Give it a little push and round over the corner of the brush. Round it over corner to the top of the bushes and just gently touch, 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 touch. Be very gentle with this and paint one little bush at a time. Leave a little shadow here and there. And before you know it, you created a whole bank of trees and bushes. But don't get in a hurry and don't add too much colour all in one go. Look at the end of your brush. Make sure it's still open and lacy. If it clogs, give it a dry clean. I'll repeat this process on the other side. Centre line of the tree, then a little highlight. Keep it on the right hand side, which is where the light's coming from. And then load your 1-inch brush, round its side to the top, and add one little bush at a time. Vary your colours. Sometimes use Indian yellow and yellow ochre. Creates a lovely golden colour. Keep checking the shape of your brush and add one little bush at a time. I've saved lots of these little dark areas in my bushes, and I can sneak back in and drop in a few sparklers here and there. But don't kill all the shadows. We need somewhere for little bunny rabbits to sleep and birds to catch a snooze. Now, I dry clean my 1-inch brush and gently pull down those reflections, but super gentle. The highlight colours will really want to slide a lot. And again, edge to centre. And add a little waterline, just as we've done in the background. And then to bring the edge together, I use the corner of my fan brush and a little bit of that highlight colour, just to add a few little grassy touches. And a splash of colour. I've used a little bit of odourless thinners to thin down that dark sienna, so I can use my liner brush to add a few little sticks and twigs. They sort of poke out between these bushes. Remember, use your brush like you would a pen, so hold the handle well back and paint with just the very tip of the brush. Now time for some scratchy sticks and twigs. Scratch into the dark areas to reveal the white of the canvas, and then use the blade of the knife to push into the paint to create little grasses. These little tiny details are what really give your painting that touch of quality. But don't tell anybody how you did it. It's our secret. And finally, a signature. And we're finished. The Grandeur of Summer, a Bob Ross classic that everyone should have a go at painting. But don't go away, there's another painting coming along just now. Happy painting, people.